Before the ships arrived, before the markets of flesh and the scars of iron, there was Africa, a continent not of darkness, but of brilliance. Her lands pulsed with music and trade, her cities glittered beneath desert suns, and her people walked with pride, guided by wisdom older than time. Long before the first foreign sails touched her shores, Africa was already ancient, home to civilizations that rose, flourished, and reached beyond the horizon. The story of Africa did not begin with slavery. It began with greatness. In the heart of West Africa stood Ghana, one of the earliest known empires. Its name meant warrior king, and from the 7th to the 13th century, it controlled vast trade routes of gold and salt. Caravans stretched like golden rivers across the Sahara, linking Africa to the Mediterranean world. Then came Mali, the empire of wealth and wisdom. Under the rule of Mansa Musa, Mali became one of the richest nations in human history. When Musa traveled to Mecca in 1324, his generosity was so great that gold's value in Egypt reportedly collapsed for years. In the east, the kingdom of Aksum rose near the Red Sea, trading with India, Arabia, and Byzantium. Aksum minted its own coins, built towering stone obelisks, and became one of the first African kingdoms to embrace Christianity in the 4th century. And to the south, along the forests and coasts, thrived Benin, renowned for its bronze artistry and grand-walled cities, architecture that stunned even the Europeans who later visited. Africa was not waiting to be discovered. She was already discovering herself. In the golden city of Timbuktu, learning was sacred. Scholars gathered beneath the desert stars, copying manuscripts by hand, works of astronomy, medicine, mathematics, law, and poetry. The Sankore University held thousands of volumes, a library so vast that some say it rivaled the great universities of Europe and the Middle East. Education was not reserved for the privileged. It was a duty, a pathway to understanding the divine and maintaining harmony within the world. Across Africa, knowledge was not limited to books. In Ethiopia, astronomers studied the heavens to mark time and seasons. In Central Africa, healers understood the plants and minerals that could restore health. And in Southern Africa, the builders of Great Zimbabwe designed massive stone cities without mortar, their walls still standing as silent witnesses to African genius. Africa's universities, her scientists, and her philosophers existed centuries before the first European one was ever founded. This was not a continent of ignorance, it was a continent of enlightenment. From the deserts to the seas, Africa thrived on trade. Gold from Mali, salt from Tagaza, ivory from the Congo, and spices from the Swahili coast. In the east, along the Indian Ocean, Swahili-speaking merchants built elegant cities, Kilwa, Mombasa, Zanzibar, where traders from Arabia, India, and even China docked their ships. The monsoon winds carried goods and stories across the ocean, porcelain, silk, glass, and iron. Africa was never isolated. She was deeply connected to the global economy long before the word existed. And at the heart of it all was cooperation, trade built on trust, kinship, and shared prosperity. No chains, no ships of sorrow, only exchange and respect. Life in pre-slave trade Africa was not only about power and wealth, it was about balance. Each community, from the desert Tuareg to the forest Ashanti, lived by a deep sense of spiritual harmony. The African worldview saw life as a circle. The living, the ancestors, and the unborn were all part of one eternal community. An offense against one was an offense against all. Leaders were not chosen by greed but by wisdom. Councils of elders advised kings. Women ruled in their own right, like Queen Amina of Zazzau, who led armies in Nigeria, or Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, whose legend crossed from Ethiopia into biblical history. Justice systems focused not on punishment, but on reconciliation, restoring peace rather than destroying lives. And art, music, and storytelling kept history alive, a living memory passed from tongue to ear, generation to generation. This was Africa's soul, one that valued unity, not domination. But change was coming. In the mid-15th century, the first Portuguese ships appeared off the coast of West Africa. At first, their sails brought curiosity and opportunity. They traded gold, pepper, and fabrics. But soon the nature of trade began to shift. Europe's hunger for wealth and labor grew insatiable. The discovery of the Americas had created vast plantations, and the demand for workers turned human. What began as friendship and commerce slowly turned into manipulation and greed. The visitors who once offered goods began to demand people. Tribal conflicts were exploited, and kings were pressured to capture enemies in exchange for European weapons or goods. The continent's harmony began to tremble. As the centuries passed, the old empires weakened. The once proud cities of West Africa faced new internal divisions. The gold and salt routes that had made Africa rich were now replaced by new routes, ones that led from the interior to the coast, where ships waited not for cargo, but for captives. Europe's guns changed the balance of power. Rival kingdoms fought for control, and Africa's own people were turned against one another. It was not that Africa was destined for slavery. It was targeted. Foreign greed met internal struggle, and from that collision rose one of humanity's darkest chapters, the transatlantic slave trade. But even in that storm, Africa's spirit did not die. Her people carried with them stories, songs, and memories that no chain could silence. Africa before the slave trade was not a silent wilderness. It was a continent of scholars, artists, astronomers, builders, and dreamers. When we remember only the chains, we erase the crown that came before them. When we speak only of pain, we forget the pride that defined this land for millennia. The slave trade was not the beginning of African history. It was an interruption in a story far greater than the world was ever told. And so, as we journey deeper into this series, from the shores of Benin to the islands of the Caribbean, from the coasts of Ghana to the plantations of the New World, we must carry this truth. Africa was never conquered in spirit. Her story began with greatness, and greatness will always return. Join us for the next chapter, when the ships arrive and the world changes forever. Subscribe to Journey Through Africa, share this story, and help restore the memory of a continent whose light has never gone out.